Dorothy Motherfucker. Dorothy Motherfucker, yeah, that's actually her name in the anime. She's the final form of Alina Gray, who basically went off the deep end. Alina let her own doppel called Fever devour her, then infected and took over the body of a massive biological entity named Embryo Eve. The result was a full-blown fusion that turned her into this chaotic god-complex witch named Dorothy Motherfucker, though some people just call her Alina Eve or Dorothy for short. In this state, Alina doesn't just look monstrous. She can spread her doppel like a disease to tens of thousands of people all at once. When they get infected, they turn into artificial magical girls. These people can be any age, any gender, and boom, they've got magic. But like regular magical girls, they have to use grief seeds to stay sane. If they don't, they'll get taken over by the fever doppel and become witches themselves. It's a huge power-up, but it comes with that classic Madoka-style catch. Alina doesn't see this as a curse, though. She calls it art. In her words, humanity's prosperity is the price. Magic without needing physical strength or social status is the price. And honestly, she doesn't even think a price is necessary. She believes in free-of-charge magic distribution is God, which is basically her way of saying everyone should have magic, no strings attached. Originally, Embryo Eve was supposed to absorb Tuca, Nemu, and Walpurgisnacht to perfect the doppel system, but Alina hijacked the whole plan and went rogue. In episode 25 of the anime, she fuses with Eve, turns into Dorothy Motherfucker, and immediately goes after Walpurgisnacht. Tuca and Nemu land a solid hit, blowing off part of her body and a wing, but she regenerates and keeps pushing forward. She sees Walpurgisnacht get destroyed by Madoka Kaname, but doesn't get much time to react before Iroha and Yachio shut her down for good. Walpurgisnacht. Walpurgisnacht is introduced right at the start of the anime in episode 1, during Madoka's dream. At first, we don't even know what she is, just that she's massive and horrifying. Later on, we learn she's the strongest witch, unless Madoka turns into one herself. Walpurgisnacht is a fusion of countless witches, like a magical disaster that grew stronger over time. Her design is also wild. She looks like a giant doll in a fancy Renaissance-style dress with massive sleeves, ruby gems, and instead of legs, she's got a turning gear that connects to her body. Walpurgisnacht doesn't even need a labyrinth like other witches. She just shows up out in the open, and the damage she causes is huge. Homura even says she's strong enough to wipe out an entire city. Her theme is all about theater and drama. She's called the stage-constructing witch because she literally brings her own twisted show to life, with a parade of clown-like familiars that dance around like it's some horrifying carnival. These familiars might actually be the spirits of fallen magical girls. She's been part of every major timeline that Homura goes through. In the first one, she kills Madoka and Mami. In another, Madoka manages to beat her, but turns into a witch from the grief. Even with Homura's explosives and military weapons, Walpurgisnacht just keeps coming. She's that tough. It's only in episode 12 that Madoka, after finally making a wish to erase all witches before they're born, destroys Walpurgisnacht once and for all. But in doing that, Madoka also erases her own existence as a human. Albertine. Albertine is known as the scribbling witch. Her whole thing is loving the game hide and seek, but the sad part is none of her minions are smart enough to actually find her, so she ends up being alone most of the time. Her design matches her childish nature. She first popped up in Madoka Magica Portable, hidden in a route only unlocked by finishing Sayaka's story. In the game, she draws Anja minions right onto the floor and hides in block towers. You literally have to smash the blocks to get her to show up. If she starts crying during battle, you can't even attack her unless you have a special ability to block status effects. Her barrier is like walking into a child's daydream. Everything around you turns huge, so the minions seem massive and Albertine looks like a giant. The final room is a creepy planetarium space with eyeballs, eyebrows, and mouths on the ceiling, and bouncy balls flying out of puffy yellow blobs. She eventually makes her anime debut in Magia Record Episode 5. She defeats Momoko and Rena, but Kaede uses her doppel to take her down. Albertine's blood is this weird black and rainbow color, and when she's defeated, Anjas fly out of her hair trying to escape. Anjas are her familiars, and they're just as weird. One of their abilities is turning people into bouncy balls, and the only way to turn back is by bouncing once for every lie you've ever told. Anjas themselves are super naive and are always daydreaming, which explains why they get lost easily. They even show up in the Rebellion story, having somehow stowed away in Sayaka's bag. Albertine's behavior really drives home that she's basically a lonely kid. She tries to invite people to play, but if you say yes, she'll rip out your heart playfully, and if you ignore her, she'll steal something important from you just to get your attention. Boxwood. Boxwood shows up in episode 1, where she haunts a train and snatches a cat, which leads Iroha to discover her. Boxwood prefers staying hidden inside her tube-shaped nest, made out of random junk she collects in her labyrinth. labyrinth. She just swims around peacefully most of the time, but if someone disturbs her, she gets aggressive and attacks with a body slam, frills flared out like some weird underwater monster. The inside of her labyrinth is extra strange too. The sky is filled with floating pasta, and it's all because she once saw a pasta-shaped god. No one knows exactly what that means, but fans think it might be a reference to the flying spaghetti monster meme. Her familiars are these flotsam-like things, basically unborn lives just drifting around. They don't do much unless someone intrudes, and then they work with box wood to fight back. When Iroha and Kuroi face her the second time, everyone on the train had already been marked by a witch's kiss and turned on them, but instead of dying in that moment, Boxwood somehow ends up traveling with Iroha into Kamihama City. That's where she accidentally stumbles into Zenobia's labyrinth, and unfortunately for her, Zenobia completely destroys her, literally rips her in half. Gertrud. Gertrud is the very first witch we see, and she's known as the Rose Garden Witch. Her whole thing is roses, and she's obsessed with them. She spends all her energy keeping them alive and beautiful. She drains the life out of humans who wander into her labyrinth just to feed her flowers. She doesn't even like people walking around in there. She hates them messing up her perfect rose garden. Her nature is distrustful, which fits with how defensive her world is. Her appearance is just as weird as you'd expect from a witch. Her body looks like a cylinder made of some gross mix of fat and blood, and it's held up by black roots. Her hair is actually moss with roses growing out of it. In episode 1, Madoka and Sayaka get pulled into Gertrude's barrier for the first time while saving Kyubi. That's where we first see her minions, the Anthonys, surrounding the girls. They get rescued by Mami, who then hunts Gertrude down in episode 2. Along the way, she saves a woman who had Gertrude's witch kiss on her, which usually leads to suicide. Mami eventually finds and defeats Gertrude, with the scene ending in those iconic butterflies. Gertrude has two kinds of minions, Anthony and Adalbert. Anthony is her landscaper. He's got a mustache that the witch herself styles. Anthony is usually the one doing the dirty work, attacking with black scissors and using high-pitched voices. In the anime, they change their faces when attacking and seem super aggressive despite their fancy mustaches. Adalbert, on the other hand, is the lookout. When he spots a human, he rings an alarm and then headbutts them without hesitation. The small ones can even turn into rose vines to trap people. Gisela. Gisela is the Silver Witch, and she's one of the more visually striking and oddly themed witches in the series. Her whole thing is speed and chaos. Her labyrinth is a place where everything is zooming by at high speed. But ironically, Gisela herself is incredibly slow and dull. It's like she's stuck in slow motion while the world around her blurs past. She used to shine bright silver, but now she's all rusted and worn down from just staring at a coastal sunset too long. That tarnished look is a big part of her identity. You first see her in episode 7 during Kyoko's flashback. Gisela shows up to fight, but we never see the actual end of the battle. Her defeat is left up in the air, which leaves fans guessing whether she survived or not. Gisela doesn't work alone. She's got a minion named Dora. Dora is loud, annoying, and kind of wild. She's got pipes sticking out of her that make all sorts of obnoxious noises as she barrels around like a chaotic sandstorm. She's even said to declare opinions for Gisela, which is a funny way of saying she's constantly making a ruckus. Charlotte. Charlotte first shows up in episode 3 of the original anime, where she becomes infamous for taking out Mami Tomoe in one of the show's most shocking moments. At first, she looks like a cute floating dessert creature with a candy-like head, but she transforms into a massive monster with sharp teeth, her second form, right before she kills and eats Mami. She's known as the Dessert Witch, and has a strong obsession with sweets. But weirdly enough, even though she can make endless desserts, she can't create cheese. And she really wants cheese. Charlotte's magical girl form is Nagisa Momo, which gets revealed later in the Rebellion story movie. In that timeline, she goes by Bibe and lives with Mami as a helpful ally. Bebe doesn't talk much at first, but becomes louder and more playful later. Mami even made Bebe's clothes by hand. When Homura starts to question the world around her, Bebe and Sayaka reveal that they were sent by Ultimate Madoka as part of the Law of Cycles. Bebe can switch between her witch form and magical girl form freely, and even uses her second monstrous form again, though it looks a little different. Charlotte also has weird little minions called Piotr and Polina. Piotr is a mouse-like creature with a stamp for a face. Its job is to search for cheese by headbutting things to see if they're cheese or not. If it is, you get a cheese approval stamp. If not, too bad. Polina, on the other hand, looks like a nurse and helps out with support stuff like healing and helping Mami in battle. In the anime, when Homura saves the others from Charlotte, you can see both minions running around, Piotr spinning in circles and Polina helping Mami with her trapezes. Durbar. Durbar is called the Ikigami Witch, which means she's tied to the idea of a living god, a concept from Japanese religion that that refers to someone considered holy while still alive. Her main thing is purification. She's obsessed with constantly cleansing herself of her sins, so much so that she's always soaking in water. She can actually see the future with the many eyes on her tongue, but she's so fixated on her own inner filth that she doesn't even pay attention to what's ahead. Her entire existence revolves around trying to wash away the spiritual dirt deep inside her, and she won't stop until she's completely clean. If anyone interrupts her, she lashes out with floods of water and bolts of lightning. On top of that, if even a drop of her impurity touches someone else, it stains their soul and can literally kill them. That's how toxic her sins are. She also has minions named Patan, which are basically her personal assistants. They're constantly clinging to her feet, trying to serve her, but it's a tough job. The holy water from her purification process can actually melt them, so they're always scrambling around to avoid it. Still, they're super loyal and won't leave her side, even though they know the job could destroy them. What's interesting is that they survive by eating the sins that pour out of her, so if she ever actually manages to fully purify herself, they're screwed. Elsa Maria. Elsa Maria shows up at the end of episode 7. She's known as the Shadow Witch, and her main trait is self-righteousness. Basically, she prays non-stop for all living things, and while doing that, she pulls everything around her into her shadow. No exceptions, no mercy. Her posture never breaks, and she stays perfectly still, hands together in prayer, the entire time. Her design and vibe are super religious, mixing Christian and Buddhist elements. You even see it in her creepy labyrinth, a dark church-like place filled with skulls, dead trees, and this massive female statue. At one point, she even grows a giant tree out of her back to keep Sayaka away. Sayaka still manages to destroy her, slashing her up in one of the bloodiest scenes in the show. After that, Elsa Maria's grief seed is left behind, but Sayaka, now cold and bitter, refuses to take it and gives it to Kyoko instead. Elsa Maria's minions are called Sebastians. These things look weird and twisted, and their whole purpose is to blindly believe whatever Elsa Maria represents. They're said to be made from the lives she's saved, and they constantly look for more people to join them. Etteilla. Etteilla is the witch form of Melana, and she's called the Witch of Fortune Tellers, and her whole thing is about disclosure, basically digging into the truth of fate itself. Inside her barrier, she endlessly flips tarot cards at her table, looking into the past, present, and future like it's her personal hobby. She finds joy in knowing all destinies, but things get creepy fast. If someone walks into her barrier, she'll think they're there to admire her powers, and she'll gladly reveal deep truths about them. But those truths aren't always good news, and if you accept what she shows you, she traps you and turns you into her apprentice. If you fight back, she doesn't just attack, she'll show you every kind of suffering possible. That's her way of dealing with rejection. In the anime, she shows up after Mel's soul gem turns into a grief seed, turning her into this witch. Later in episode 21, Tsuruno Yui defeats her in a flashback scene. Candeloro. Candeloro is the witch form of Mami Tomo. She's known as the dress-up witch with an inviting personality, and while she seems kind, she doesn't let anyone leave her barrier once they enter. Her whole vibe is very tea party fantasy with a dark twist. Her labyrinth is filled with teacups, apple trees, rainbow bridges, and even has happy birthday texts scattered around. It's decorated like Mami's ideal world, but has a gloomy, overcast sky hanging over it all. One creepy detail is the black teacups. They're huge and pretty much empty of decoration. Candeloro has two main familiars named Du Polignac, and they resemble magical girls Madoka and Kyoko, even fighting in their style. The Madoka-like one uses a red bow, while the Kyoko-style one fights with a yellow-orange spear. These minions guide intruders to Candeloro's tea party and make sure no one escapes. If anyone tries, Candeloro literally ties them up. In combat, Candeloro fights like Mami, using rifle-style attacks and ribbons that can bind enemies. She even has a version of Mami's iconic Tiro Finale attack, except hers shoots flames. Candy. Candy looks like a big, creepy stuffed bunny with long ears. She acts like she's a princess and truly believes she's the cutest thing ever. Inside her labyrinth, she collects anything she thinks is adorable and loves being told how pretty she looks. But if she picks up even a hint of negativity, she instantly flips out. She'll throw a tantrum, bite, and even stab things with spears if she's upset, even if she looked totally fine just seconds before. Her minions are called Herald, and their job is basically to keep Candy happy. They run around her labyrinth looking for cute stuff to decorate her with. If they bring her something she doesn't like, she doesn't just get mad, she literally slices them open. So, being her minion is a serious risk, but if you ever run into a herald, don't panic. Just toss something shiny or cute like wrapping paper, and it'll grab it and run off back to her. One of the creepiest little details about her is that during one of her attacks, her head literally splits open and shows what looks like a pelvis inside. H.N. Elly. Elly, also known as H.N. Elly or Kirsten, is the witch that shows up in episode 4 of Madoka Magica. Her witch type is called the Box Witch, and her nature is covetous. Basically, that means she hoards what she admires, trapping it behind glass, whether it's memories, objects, or even people. She's extremely reclusive and doesn't want to be seen, but she sees everything. Anyone caught in her barrier has their inner thoughts exposed like an open book. This witch doesn't attack out of rage or chaos. She's all about keeping what she treasures locked away. Her whole vibe feels like someone obsessed with the past, with frozen memories and moments she can't let go of. Her labyrinth is designed like a twisted snow globe. There's a Christmas tree, merry-go-rounds, piles of TVs, and this feeling of fake happiness covering something darker. When she dies, the decorations short-circuit. Inside her world, we also see Madoka's memories getting pulled up on screens, including images of Mommy dying. That's a gut punch for Madoka, especially since she was already feeling guilty. That guilt is what draws Elly to her. Her minions, Danielle and Jennifer, look like little creatures with TV heads, and their job is to move stuff around. Anything they touch becomes light and easy to carry. In episode 4, they swarm Madoka and distort her image. They even try to pull her apart, but Sayaka shows up just in time to save her and destroy Elly. Before Elly is completely wiped out, her monitor shows Mommy smiling, possibly her last boxed up memory. Homulilly. Homulilly is the witch form of Homura Akemi and has two main forms, both referred to as the Nutcracker Witch. Her theme is self-sufficiency, but it's twisted in a dark way. In her first form, she's basically a broken nutcracker who used to have a strong purpose but is now just stuck reliving her own execution over and over again, almost like she wants it, but her death wouldn't actually fix anything. In her second form, things get really disturbing. Her skull is melted, teeth are shattered, eyeballs are gone, but despite all that, she still holds on to the look of a magical girl. Her minions even call her failure and feel ashamed of her. Homulilly's world is like a never-ending funeral procession, and she's got a whole creepy crew to help her keep it going. The Clara dolls are weird dress-up dolls who fake cry to make the funeral look more dramatic. Each doll represents a negative trait like pride, cowardice, or laziness. The last one, love, hasn't shown up yet. Then there's Lotte, a tin soldier that punishes people and marches the witch to the guillotine. These soldiers have big, heavy heads, hate rats, and don't even listen to the witch. Louise Lotte rides a rotting tooth and hunts white rats. Lise is a weird bird that brings bad news but is kinda dumb and crashes into things because it can't see well. And Lilia is a nutcracker doll that chews up enemies and can even fire nuts like a cannon. Ichizo. Ichizo is the witch form of Kuroe, and her witch name is the Nighthawk Witch, and her nature is about escape. She's not a big, threatening type of witch. Her whole deal is that she runs. She ran from darkness, from hope that was too bright, from people she couldn't save, and even from the future where she was meant to be saved. She's stuck in this endless loop of running, never facing anything head on. Even in her own barrier, basically her witch's personal world, she just flies around chasing a red star that's always out of reach. Her wings and even her sense of self have melted into mud, so she has no direction or purpose anymore. It's like she exists and doesn't exist at the same time. Itzli. Itzli is known as the Witch of Oblivion, and her nature is vengeance. What's wild is that people say she used to be a magical girl from the end of the galaxy. That alone sets her apart. She's not even originally from Earth. Now she shows herself with the purpose of forgetting every magical girl in this universe. It's like she just wants to erase everything tied to that life, which might explain her whole vibe and powers. In the game, Itzli is the final boss of a barrier called Oblivious, which is found on floor 50. Her barrier looks like a grassy field, but it has weird stuff like film reels and a giant hole she pops out of. She doesn't have her own original familiars. Instead, she uses shadow magical girls that look just like the ones Walpurgisnacht uses. Her attacks are super aggressive. She can grow huge hands out of the goo surrounding her brain and literally crush enemies with them. One of her wildest moves involves turning all that goo into an arrow, launching it sky high, then slamming it back down. And when she summons witches and familiars, they have this fuzzy film grain effect, like they're being pulled straight from someone's old memories. Izabel. Izabel is called the artist witch, and her defining trait is vanity. She's full of herself. Izabel believes she's some sort of chosen genius, and she's desperate for people to admire her work. So desperate, in fact, that she constantly messes with the human world just to show off. But there's a catch. Inside her barrier, all her art looks strangely familiar, like stuff you've already seen somewhere. It's not original at all. That's the irony. She thinks she's groundbreaking, but she's basically just copying other people's work. You could beat her just by dragging a famous art critic into her barrier. That's how insecure her whole world is. When Izabel appears in the anime, she targets Homura during one of her low points. Homura ends up wandering into her barrier, and Izabel seems to speak to her, trying to manipulate her mentally, possibly even pushing her towards suicide. Homura realizes something's off just in time, but Isabel's minions, called Michaela, come after her. That's when Madoka and Mami show up and take care of Izabel with a joint attack. Her minion Michaela is not just a helper, she is the art. Every person Izabel kills ends up with their body parts built into Michaela. Kriemhild Gretchen. Kriemhild Gretchen is one of the most intense and overpowered witches in the entire series. She shows up in episode 10 in different timelines, and then again in episode 12 in her most insane form. What makes her wild is that she isn't just a monster out for destruction. Her nature is mercy. She honestly thinks she's saving the world by sucking up all life and dragging it into her barrier. which she believes is a kind of heaven. She's called the Witch of Salvation for a reason. The only way to stop her is to wipe out all misfortune on Earth, basically create a perfect world. And if that somehow happens, she'll think the world is already heaven and stop. Otherwise, she'll keep going until there's nothing left. Her minions are in charge of measuring the hearts of people who want to go to her heaven. They put your sins on a scale, and if you're super guilty, you might actually get more mercy from the witch. In Magia record, her doppel forms take things even further. In her regular doppel form, she becomes a massive floating soul gem that pulls everything in, controls it, and rains light arrows down, while Madoka sleeps inside. The Haragi version ties into New Year's and grants people's wishes with so much force that it crushes everything under the weight of mercy. There's also a funny twist in the Madoka Senpai version. Her doppel literally kicks her out like she doesn't belong. Then you've got the swimsuit version, which turns her doppel into a giant ice cream sundae that freezes everything it touches. It's ridiculous, but it still follows the same weird logic, destroying the world through a twisted version of kindness. Marusya. Marusya is known as the Hanamichi witch, and her nature is resurrection. Marusya absorbs dead human bodies into herself and brings them back as her minions. She's not doing it to build power or take over anything, she just wants to give life back. But she can't really tell the difference between someone who's dead and someone who's still alive. That's a serious issue, especially when you're wandering around trying to collect bodies. In her labyrinth, there are tons of minions crammed under the runway-like path, which shows just how many corpses she's managed to bring back. Her minions are called the Hanamichi Witch's minions, and they're basically people she's already reincarnated. These minions constantly mutter complaints, but they're not really thinking. Their brains are just stuck on repeat, replaying whatever they were thinking right before and after they died. So whatever they're saying is just noise, nothing helpful. Oktavia von Seckendorff. Oktavia von Seckendorff is the witch form of Sayaka Miki, is known as the Mermaid Witch, and her whole theme is about falling in love. Once Sayaka gives in to despair, she transforms into Octavia, and her world becomes a massive moving concert hall. She's obsessed with music and stuck in her memories, especially one involving a guitar performance that meant a lot to her. Her design includes armor, a long cape, and she attacks using giant wheels and swords. The creepy part is that her orchestra minions, called Holgers, constantly perform music for her, and anyone who listens for too long risks losing their soul. In her labyrinth, nothing matters to her anymore except the music. She doesn't even react when Kyoko slices off her hand. In episode 9, Kyoko tries to save Sayaka by bringing Madoka into Octavia's world, but Octavia lashes out and attacks them. Eventually, Kyoko sacrifices herself to destroy Octavia, hoping she could be with Sayaka in the end. In episode 10, we see a version of Octavia in another timeline. This time her world looks more like a rock concert than a symphony, and instead of Holger, she has Clarissa as her minion, cheerful backup dancers who kind of look like Hitomi. In that timeline, all 4 girls team up to fight her, but Homura ends things fast with an explosive. Octavia also shows up in the Rebellion story, but this time she's summoned by Sayaka, who's become part of the Law of Cycles. Now, Octavia isn't just a mindless witch. Sayaka controls her and uses her in battle. She can show up anywhere there's water, and unlike some witches, her witch form and human form can operate separately. Ophelia. Ophelia is the witch form of Kyoko Sakura and is a Wudan witch, based on the fierce female warrior type from Chinese opera, and represents self-abandonment. After everything Kyoko's been through, losing her family, failing to protect Sayaka, she eventually breaks down and transforms into this tragic, fog-wandering witch. Ophelia walks endlessly through mist with empty footsteps, and she's so far gone that she doesn't even remember what her constant companion, the horse-like creature beside her, used to be. That detail says a lot. She's lost not just her way, but even the memories that used to guide her. In battle, Ophelia is not really headless, but it looks that way at first. Her head is a flat surface with a candle flame on top, and there's actually an eye beneath the fire. Her barrier is full of marching minions named Zoe, who wear colorful warrior outfits. These things just walk through the fog in perfect formation. They look almost like they're doing a ritual or a funeral march. Some of them attack by turning their heads into dragon-like forms and breathing fire, while others can summon more troops or do powerful melee strikes. Oshiti. Oshiti shows up in a flashback battle against Yachio Nanami's team and is defeated just before Kanai Yukino's death. Oshiti is called the Gokumon Witch, which links to a brutal Edo period execution method in Japan, where someone was beheaded and their head was put on display. Fittingly, Oshiti is literally just a head, hanging upside down in her labyrinth. She's been convicted of sin, and now she spends her time weeping and waiting for someone. But her voice doesn't sound normal. It comes out as deadly heat rays that burn everything around her to ash, even if she's just trying to talk. So if anyone enters her labyrinth, even if they're the person she's waiting for, they're basically doomed the second she opens her mouth. Her whole barrier is filled with gravestones, each one tied to a sin she committed or an innocent person with a lingering regret. Oshiti isn't alone in her labyrinth either. She's got minions called Suzugamori, named after a real execution ground in Japan. These minions actually punished her by stringing her up in the first place, but they're not satisfied that she's just ahead. They're out looking for her missing body. They grab intruders while Oshiti, without meaning to, fries them with her voice. The teamwork between them is weirdly effective, even though it's not on purpose. The minions get caught in her blast too sometimes. They even leave the labyrinth sometimes to find something, or someone, that could replace her torso. They don't care if it fits. They just go with whatever feels right. Paola. Paola is the witch of rubber, and her nature is rebounding. That basically means she bounces a lot, like a big rubber ball. Her barrier is this endless ocean, like you're stuck in a giant beach that never ends. But Paola can't swim, at all. So even though her whole world is made of water, she spends most of her time hanging onto her minions so she doesn't drown. She's supposed to be able to launch high-speed body slams by bouncing around, but she's too busy clinging to her helpers to even try. When it's not beach season, she just straight up hibernates. Her minions, called Bona, are floaty little creatures made to keep her from sinking. They glide over the water like pond skaters and shoot beach balls that mess with gravity. If you get hit, you might flip upside down and end up drowning in the ocean. And since they're full of air, they're scared of sharp stuff that could pop them. They often disguise themselves as those inflatable swim rings, which makes them even more dangerous. People don't realize what they are until it's too late. Patricia. Patricia is called the class representative witch, and her whole theme is based around school and isolation. Her main thing is being a bystander. She doesn't go out of her way to attack unless someone messes with her routine. In her barrier, which looks like a school floating in the sky made out of spider-like threads, she acts out the same boring school day over and over, completely alone. She literally vomits thread to build this place. Her barrier is filled with things like clotheslines, desks, and eerie school items, all arranged in this weird, endless space that's supposed to reflect how she saw school life. Dull, repetitive, and kind of hopeless. Patricia used to be a serious, quiet girl who didn't really stand out, and that shows in everything about her. She created a school for herself because that's the only thing she knew. Even her minions, called Mathieu, are like weird classmates, only they're just legs wearing skates, sliding along the threads. They have no upper bodies and are just puppets being controlled by Patricia's webs. Their shirts hang on lines like unused laundry. These minions don't have minds of their own. They just fill in roles as background characters in her fake student life. She first appears in episode 10 of the anime during one of the timelines where Mami, Homura, and Madoka fight her. Homura finishes her off by stopping time and tossing a pipe bomb under her skirt. She also shows up in Magia Record, The Rebellion Story, and Magia Etc., where her barrier design keeps evolving. It starts including mechanical arms growing from utility poles, storm clouds, and floating school shirts. The anime version of her even shows her lowering herself using her web and catching people in it. Quitterie. Quitterie is called the Needle Witch, and her whole thing is about respect. She used to be a magical girl who gave up everything to try and save the universe. Even after becoming a witch, she still believes she's doing just that, fighting for the universe. She wears a costume that looks like Kyuubi, and even her minions are dressed up like super cute plush Kyuubis. They're so adorable, it's said you wouldn't even be able to attack them. They were literally designed to be too cute to hurt. Her barrier, where you fight her, is just a plain grassy field. She doesn't drop a grief seed either, which is kinda weird for a witch fight. Quitterie only appears in one place, floor 49 of the Oblivious Barrier. You won't find her in the main story, so she's pretty easy to miss. But there's a lot going on with her design. Her jacket has a galaxy pattern, tying into the whole saving the universe thing, and a QB head sits on top, pushing the idea that she still sees herself as a hero, not a monster. Raspberry. Raspberry shows up briefly in a flashback where she fights Yachio Nanami's team, and interestingly, she actually manages to escape, which isn't something a lot of witches pull off. Raspberry is called the Critic Witch, and her personality is about authority and judgment. She sees herself as someone who decides what has value and what doesn't. If something or someone doesn't meet her standards, she'll stab it with a giant stake. If she sees something as valuable, she gives it a flower, but that almost never happens. She's pretty much the only one who ever gets the flower, which says a lot about how high her standards are, or how biased she is. Her labyrinth is also really unique. It glows with lights that come from the people and things she's already crushed with those stakes. It's a weird mix of pretty and creepy. Her rules for judging value aren't clear at all, so she basically acts like she's always right, even though there's no logic behind it. It's all based on her own messed up views. Her minions are called Razzies, and they don't care about any of the value stuff their witch talks about. They're tiny, flea-like creatures with big pincer mouths, and they just love attacking whatever she says is worthless. They don't have a sense of judgment, they just want to bite things. Once Raspberry marks a target as useless, these things swarm all over it without hesitation. Rebecca. Rebecca is the sheep witch, and her main thing is fear. She's terrified of basically everything. Her nature is insomnia, and it makes sense when you realize she literally never sleeps. She has so many eyes from being paranoid all the time, and not once do they all close at the same time. She's stuck in her own little fenced-in area inside her labyrinth and has never stepped outside of it, and she never will. She doesn't even act like the one in charge. Instead, she sees herself as a pet to her familiars, just waiting around for them to bring her humans to eat. Rebecca looks harmless and shy at first because she's always scared, but that changes fast if one of her familiars gets taken down. The second that happens, she completely loses control and starts rampaging. That's the only time she ever acts aggressively. Until then, she just hides inside her fence, too afraid to do anything on her own. Her familiars are called Josephs, and they see themselves as her shepherds. There are a lot of them, and their job is to take care of her. Most of the time, they're just walking around doing nothing, unless a human enters the labyrinth. Then they blow the horns around their necks to call the others and start hunting. Rebecca first appears in episode 2 of the anime, where she traps a bunch of bus passengers in her labyrinth. Iroha goes in to save them and runs into Rena, Kaede, and Momoko. Reina takes down some Josephs, and Momoko supposedly defeats Rebecca, but then Rebecca jumps out and attacks Iroha and Kaede, so clearly she wasn't finished off. After that, her fate is left hanging. Nobody really knows what happened to her. Roberta. Roberta is known as the birdcage witch, and her main personality trait is rage. She's literally locked up in a birdcage, stomping her feet non-stop, totally furious at anyone who ignores her. Her whole vibe screams anger and frustration. Roberta's also got a strange love for alcohol, which shows up a lot in the details of her barrier. Her minions are called goths. These guys are basically dumb, bird-like men who swarm around her like desperate fans trying to impress her, but she absolutely hates them. They're useless, annoying, and super easy to burn. Roberta doesn't really last long in the anime. Homura kills her quickly by pausing time and shooting her with a machine gun. That's about it for her screen time in the main show. Shitori Egumo. Shitori Egumo, also known as Embryo Eve, is the witch form of Uitamaki. She begins as a half-witch, growing inside a force field, kind of like a giant womb. This thing feeds on all the emotions from people around it, especially the dark energy that comes from magical girls when they turn into witches. It even absorbs the impurities from their soul gems. To keep all this crazy power from going out of control, it stabilizes itself by spreading gems throughout its body. Once it fully matures, it goes full monster mode. Its goal is to devour energy, destroy the planet, and keep feeding until it becomes one big chunk of the universe. Shitori Egumo has 2 forms. Her first form is the Happy Witch, which is ironic because her actual nature is suffering. Her second form is the Witch of Happiness, but nothing about it is happy either. After she loses something important, clearly referring to Ui's separation from her body, she starts shaking the earth in rage, trying to fill that emotional hole. She won't stop unless she gets that specific girl back. But here's the scary part. If the force field keeping her stable breaks, she dissolves into the air, and no one knows what kind of damage her scattered impurity could cause. Her minions are unnamed little swallow-like creatures that fly around Kamihama. They don't care about regular humans, only magical girls and other witches. These things steal magic, memories, emotions, and even visions to offer to their witch. They have anchor-shaped legs to trap their prey. Later on, they're revealed to be called Oscars, and their main job is to present offerings to Shitori. When enough of them gather, they cause a tornado that builds a nest where they prepare the energy they've collected. Even after they lose their master, they keep going. Slave of Anima. Slave of Anima is called the Witch of Meat Grillers, and her whole existence revolves around one thing: labor. She's shaped like a dog and works non-stop, turning a giant wheel that powers a grill to cook meat. She's been doing it so long that she doesn't even remember why. She just works until she dies from exhaustion. And when that happens, one of her minions is picked to take her place, keeping the cycle going endlessly. Her minions are just as stuck. They're basically her underpaid kitchen crew, serving the grilled meat and washing plates. But there aren't any customers, so they end up secretly throwing the meat away. And even though the job sucks, they still think it's better than becoming the next witch themselves. That should tell you how brutal it is to be the one at the wheel. Suleika. Suleika is known as the Dark Witch, and her whole thing is being obsessed with darkness. The darker it is around her, the more powerful she becomes. If she's in total darkness, she's almost unstoppable. But because the modern world is full of lights, even something as small as a lamppost or the moon can seriously weaken her. So, despite having all this power, she's not that dangerous most of the time anymore. Her nature is described as delusional, which lines up with her backstory. She's the remains of a girl who didn't want to wake up from her dreams and found comfort only in the dark. She's been running from daylight ever since. While Suleika herself didn't show up in the original anime, her minion Ulla did. Ulla pops up right at the start of episode 3 and is quickly taken out by Mami with her signature move, Tiro Finale. Ulla is super important to Suleika because she's the one who acts out the witch's dreams in the dark. She can shapeshift into anything to show what Suleika wants, and she's insanely strong in pitch black environments. But just like Suleika, even the tiniest bit of light can cut her power in half. Uhrmann. Uhrmann is the witch form of Inui Itsumi, and while she never showed up directly in the original anime, her minions, the Bartels, did appear briefly in episode 8 when Sayaka was breaking down emotionally. Uhrmann finally made her proper debut in the Madoka Magica manga, and later showed up in Magia Record and Magia Etc., where we got to learn more about her personality and backstory. Uhrmann is known as the Canine Witch, and her whole deal is craving love, so much so that she turned into a dog because she believed people would love her more that way. It's kind of heartbreaking. Anyone who walks into her barrier or labyrinth starts to feel a strong sense of affection toward her, almost like they're being forced to care. But the only way to actually defeat her is to fake love back at her. That's the only thing that works. Her minions, the Bartels, are just mannequins that spin around in place. They don't attack or do anything. They literally just spin. This detail lines up perfectly with her story. Because Uhrmann was so unloved, she couldn't even create familiars with minds of their own. Even in the Rebellion story, the Bartels show up again, quietly spinning in Sayaka's orchestra hall without doing anything, which kinda keeps the theme going. Zenobia. Zenobia is known as the Sandbox Witch, and her whole thing is about immersion. Basically, she gets super focused on building sandcastles, but she never likes what she makes. She's stuck in this never-ending cycle of building and destroying, and it's like she's forgotten what she was even trying to make in the first place. She acts like a kid, throwing tantrums if someone interrupts her. If she's deep in her castle building zone and gets disturbed, she completely loses it and goes on a rampage. That's what makes her dangerous. Her minions are called Zabai, and their job is to pretend to be toy trains. They roll around playing with each other, and as they do that, stuff from the ground sticks to them, like dirt, toys, whatever. That debris ends up getting collected by Zenobia without anyone noticing. When she starts planning a new castle, the Zabai jump in to help, but it never lasts. Since Zenobia is impossible to please, the familiars eventually get bored and wander off.